is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering The Dark Tower, Book 5, Wolves of the Calla, Part 2, Chapter 9. The Priest's Tale Concluded. Unfound. In this chapter, so shit with Father Callahan does not go the way I expected. He has run across some really bad people. Like exceptionally bad people. In multiple universes, he's met some of the worst people. Man, I'm sorry, dude. I wish he could just die in peace in the Calla. Welcome to Unspoiled.
Sorry,
What?
I was trying to hold it back throughout your intro there. It's like, man, he's met a lot of people who suck.
Yep.
Like, more so than usual.
More than he has run across arguably more garbage people in his life than Roland and Jake did throughout the whole of these books. Like, the really bad people that they have met were really the only ones were in the city, the pubes.
In Lud, yeah.
But other than that, it's just been them dealing with supernatural forces and.
Well, I mean, Walter.
Yeah, but he meets Walter too, so that doesn't count.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I forgot about that. Yeah, I think he might have the crown.
It's just he just seems to have had the worst go of it from day one,
Yeah.
And it's just so weird to find out how early on he was in the background. Is this something that you feel like was a plan of King's, or do you feel like this was a retcon?
I think it was absolutely a retcon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I want to be generous. At the same time, I kind of feel like it was also. Not that necessarily takes away from it, No,
I don't think so.
But it would have been pretty cool if this had been planned out completely,
Yeah, I don't know. There's things like for example, the fact that you remember back when we first started doing the Gunslinger, and I was reading my newer version, the updated version.
Yes.
And I didn't mean to be.
Mm-hmm.
And they had all this shit in there about 19 and everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's not in the original.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they went back. I feel like part of that was going back and making the first part of the series, especially that first book, mesh with the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple people be like, yeah, I read the first one and just couldn't get into it. And I've been like, that just don't even use that as any kind of yardstick, because it just doesn't even feel like the same series, to be honest, at this point.
No. No, and I don't, the fact that Walter is behind them, and then he's oh, I gotta go back to being in front of them so I can lead them on, and also I have this magic ball in a box and I'm gonna give it to you so you can give it to them if they live, which they won't, but if they do,
right?
And it's I mean, it's fine. It's fine. But it there's no way it's not a retcon.
Mostly what I like about it is just that Father Callahan seems to be the only person that's talked to Walter who has been able to put him off his balance at all.
Oh, yeah. What did he say? He was
First, he says, "You're cruel." And Walter comes up short and looks at him like he's genuinely hurt by this statement.
Yeah.
And he says, well, I'm what Cause made me.
I'm just what Cause made me, man. Look, I didn't ask to be white. I mean, an asshole.
And then Callahan says, because he says, I'm what Cause made me and so are they, etc. And Callahan says, what if he's above Ka?
That's right. And he's like, oh, fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you, buddy.
Blasphemed.
Yeah.
And then lastly, Walter says something about how the top room in the tower is empty.
Yeah.
And Callahan's like, no, there is God, and he is watching everything we do. And that's when Walter snaps and like shoves him, opens the box, which opens the door.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like assuming that was what he had meant to do anyway. But
I think so.
There is a moment of it feeling like just an impulsive act.
It feels pretty clear that he meant to send him to the Calla because he's like, if they don't make it, you'll just like live for a while on this like rural existence and you'll be happy and it'll be great. And if they do, then other shit will happen.
I think what it was maybe was that he intended to talk to Callahan for longer, but what Callahan was saying flipped him out so bad that he was like, you know what? And like just did it to kind of shut him up.
That sounds likely because Walter does really love the sound of his own voice.
He is... He has the face of a human weasel, is how he's described. That's unpleasant. I don't care for that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and you know, we don't know that when Walter was like, the room in the top of the tower is empty. We don't know he's talking. We don't know he's saying there is no God, but that's how Callahan takes it.
And it seems like that is, if it's not what he meant, what Callahan says affects him for some reason, because the reaction he has is just so violent. But
it does seem like that's what it means. But you know, I mean, anyway.
So Callahan has gone back to see his friend who got hit by the Hitler Boys. I did not want to say hit by the Hitler Boys, but it sounds like a fucking like a cappella group from that nobody wants anything to do with.
First things first, there's this really quick scene at the beginning of the chapter where where Jake, Eddie, and Susanna have been talking to people for 5 fucking hours, and they go back and it's like 3 PM, and they go back to the church, and Rosalita is like, "Hey, there's some beds for you," and they're like, "What?"
Yep.
But beds?
Yeah, he's like, you know, the idea of taking a nap in the first place, and then the fact that they are getting to take a nap in a bed is just so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like this whole thing because, like, you know, as I'm starting to get to a point with the podcast where more people know who I am and are contacting me, I'm not even like doing it in person, and it's still draining. You know, people will just message me, and every person who messages, like, I want to reply to everybody, but everybody who messages me, from their perspective, they're the only one messaging me.
Right.
And on my end, I'm getting 20 of those in, you know, several days. And when you start to reply, people want to turn it into a conversation, which is totally understandable, but I'm not able to do that all the time. And I'm starting to get to a point with the sheer number of people doing this where I'm like, I'm going to have to start delegating to other people to reply to some of these, which I don't want to have to do. Like,
oh God,
what?
Tell us more about the burdens of your fame, Natasha.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like, and the thing, and I was just talking to my mom about this earlier. Occasionally I'll get people that fool me into thinking that they just want a conversation when in fact what they want to do is troll me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't realize that's what's happening until it's too late and I'm in it. And I had that happen a couple weeks ago with somebody who like then tried to jump into this. Well, was that really rape though? About a character in The Walking Dead. And I was just like, you know what? Holy shit. I didn't know that you were that guy. And once I went and looked at his profile, he had all kinds of horrifying shit on his feed. So I should have checked and known, but I just figured because he said that he liked my show and I talk about this stuff frequently that there was no way. But yeah, I mean, even when you're extroverted like I am and you kind of like feed on the energy of being around people, it just, you know, I feel like Eddie is like me in that way, but still, you know.
Yeah, and Eddie has a brief reflection on, like, you know, the exhaustion of celebrity.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, you know, Stephen King has written about this. And a lot of his books involve writers as the main characters.
Mm-hmm.
We did, for the most recent episode of Smash Fiction, we actually did a match between the main villains from The Shining and Misery.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to watch Misery again. And that, like, the main character of that book is like the most extreme version of psychopathic fandom.
Mm-hmm.
is what that. I mean, that's what Misery is about. Misery is about like how obsessed fans can get and how far they will take their crazy.
Right. Yeah.
You know. So yeah, I think I'm a little bit surprised that he didn't wax more philosophical about it right here, because he just kind of touches on it briefly. But I'm not surprised that it's in here.
I really like too that he thinks about how they wanted to give like true answers, but they found themselves giving like really careful political schmarmy answers, which I personally, as somebody who likes to just be frank with people and tell the truth, I have found myself in the position where I have to be diplomatic, and I find that to be the most draining. When you aren't even able to like use the energy that you have to just like unguardedly speak your mind, and you have to be so careful about every word that's coming out of your mouth. The mental energy that goes into guarding yourself is so much higher that it's just beyond belief. And that in particular is something that struck me when he mentions that. Just that for me is the worst. I hate not being able to just be myself. So yeah. And he goes and takes a nap. And
there's
really
there's a little weird scene between Eddie and Susanna as well, where Eddie is like, "Oh shit, before I forget, let me tell you what Tian's grandfather told me."
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "You know what? Don't want to know right now."
Yeah, which was kind of weird, right? I was just
it's a little odd,
I guess.
Given what we learn at the end of this chapter, you know, it seems like maybe her mind is in other places.
Maybe.
But and then we get Roland and Rosalita.
Can we just not ever talk about how that little section ends? She had a spring surrounded by sweet moss, and there he was refreshed. Because I wanted to die. It felt very much like walking in on your parents. And it wouldn't have if it hadn't been for that kind of language. Don't do that. Good God.
That's so good. So good. Oh, I kind of love how just like everywhere Roland goes, there's always a woman somewhere who's like, "Hi."
Yeah, right?
How are you?
And there he was refreshed. Shut up,
there
Steven.
He was refreshed.
I just covered Bag of Bones for the book club, and I covered it with the guys from Overdue, and there are just so many moments in that book where there's like a real sexual thing happening, and like at the time it's happening, you're like, huh, okay, well, let's see what this, and then later you're like, that was unnecessary. You didn't need to do any of that, Stephen. Why'd you do it? Why'd you do it, Stephen? This is at least, you know, people just living their lives, but that is not how it goes. And I feel like Stephen King just like puts things in occasionally to make his readers uncomfortable.
I was gonna ask, do you think he writes that line and he's like, "Oh wow, that was very poetic, self, good job," or do you think he writes that line and he's like,
I think he writes it and he's like, "Ha, I bet some dummy's gonna think that was poetic."
Right,
That's what I think, is that he's like, there's a little contempt there, and he's like, we'll see if anybody's smart enough to see how bad this was.
I can almost see that as being one of the things like you write and you're like, you know what, I know it shouldn't be there, but it's just too much fun to take out.
Yeah, I have that, like, I just, it's sort of like the opposite of what I think of with George R. R. Martin, whose sex scenes, I feel like he really puts forth an effort, and he's just really bad at it. When I read him, I'm just like, he was doing his best. I really feel like I'm seeing the effort in these pages, but it's just not coming together. What is
the best written sex scene in A Song of Ice and Fire?
I think the one between Asha and Carla Maid.
Oh yeah. Oh, I forgot about that one. That's a good one. Yeah. I was thinking it's probably not the best one, but it's the one that I thought of, which is the one with Cersei and Tana Merriweather.
Why would you ever think that? The Mirish Swamp scene is the one that you go
Mirish
for?
Swamp.
I'm never speaking to you again. Podcast over. The only thing worse than saying a sweet spring surrounded by moss is a fucking swamp. God, can we not with like the bodies of water and plant life?
It is the fucking worst.
Okay. So we're moving on past that.
Moving right along.
Let's talk about the priest.
Yeah. So the priest is going to conclude his story tonight because he can't sleep because it's bothering him so much. And so he and Roland talk about how Roland talked to Henchik and they know a little bit about like how he came through. But there's a lot more to the story. And it starts with, he had just gone back to New York because he had seen in the paper that Rowan Magruder, the head of Home, who he had worked with and who had been his friend, had been jacked to fuck by the Hitler brothers.
Yeah.
Even though Rowan wasn't like your typical Hitler brothers victim.
I was not prepared for how fucked up he was. Like when
He's
his sister
really
describes
fucked
it, I was just so disgusted that it was like I wanted to put the book down.
Yeah, he goes into the hospital and Rowan's sister is there. His twin sister, Rowena, who will later go on to start House Ravenclaw in England. So she is being really sweet to him and just like inviting him in and being really nice. And then all of a sudden slaps him in the face and starts like screaming at him. And I think I love this scene.
Yeah, it's interesting because like she's mad at him for being the only person that came, which is like a weird spot to be in, but she's sort of holding him responsible in this moment for the fact that everybody else is just fucking MIA. Obviously because she has nowhere to direct that anger.
Right. But I think that what I love about it is that, there's clearly some long-standing issues between the two of them about what Rowan decided to do with his life. And that sentence is never said, but it's so, I love the way it plays out. Because she can't blame her brother for anything right now. Right. He's dying in a hospital bed. So this guy shows up and she's like, it's fucking you. It's your fault that my brother, who was a beautiful writer, didn't follow his dream and win a Pulitzer Prize. And it's your fault that he never became a teacher and stayed out of danger. And it's your fault that he decided to hang out with all these fucking, losers and addicts and alcoholics down at this house and throw away his life. And it's like all the things she wants to say to him and probably either has said to him already or like has been wanting to say for a long time to Rowan.
Yeah, I'm going to say that she's said it before, but she's never been like right yet.
Yeah, and
I think maybe she expected to enjoy being right more than she is now that it's happened.
Probably. Yeah. And I don't know why exactly, but I just love how Rowan wakes up and he's like, oh my God, my writing was shit. I don't even know what she's talking about.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I took fourth in a contest where only, or I took first in a contest where only 4 people entered. So,
yeah.
Whatever.
She like makes up these, I like it because she is like, she's making up these stories to justify her point of view, which is something we all do all the time. And it's just a really nice little scene illustrating a little piece of like fundamental human nature. I really like it. But
I like how it just illustrates in a really beautiful, rational, not blaming anybody for having a different kind of personality sort of way, why some people get into public service and other people don't.
Yes.
Like, there are just some people who are willing to do something good, knowing full well they're not going to be getting accolades for it. And they might be putting themselves at more risk than otherwise.
Yes.
And that trade-off is worth it to them, and people like me just don't get that. People like me are like, I mean, that's really great and everything, but don't though. Like, I am a much more selfish person, and I considered for a little while, like, for example, getting into social work, and very quickly realized that my mental health, like, there's no way. Oh my God, doing that, seeing that kind of thing, I just couldn't do it. But there are people who put themselves at risk in that sort of way because they feel like at least they're going to do some good. And it's one of those, like, small and beautiful messages in Parks and Rec. Where,
sure, yeah, absolutely.
Leslie is just unappreciated by practically everybody. The people in her town shit on her all the time, despite her unflagging devotion and energy. And there does come a time where that starts to get her down, but then finding out that one person that she works with really sees her and appreciates her is enough to completely regenerate her energy for herself, and that's just who he is. And his sister is just a much more typical person. And I don't mean that in a, like, oh, she's so average and ordinary. I mean, most of us are not like that.
She's not extraordinary.
Yeah. And, like, there's a reason that the world is in the state that it's in. And it's because we don't have that many people willing to make that kind of sacrifice. They are the minority. And I put myself very firmly in the other category. I'm not willing, like, most of the time. And I just really like that what she's saying all makes complete sense. She's not wrong. And I think even her brother, probably, if they've had this argument before, he's never said she's wrong. He's probably just said, yeah, well, oh well.
Yeah, what are you going to do?
And I really like that the two of them make total sense as their own people, and it's nobody's fault. And he knew that there was a potential for something horrific to happen eventually because of the shit he's seen. I mean, there's that scene that Callahan describes later with the guy just pulling out a razor and slicing a dude's throat at the dinner table. You know, like, he had to know there was potential for this, but that is a risk he was willing to take, and she's not. She's not willing for him to take it, and her opinion does not matter, and that's not a great place to be when you care about somebody.
Yeah, there was a time when I felt like I was really like willing to give up whatever it was that I had, in the service of others. And, like, I'm not saying that I don't, like, I will still tell you that making that kind of sacrifice is the noblest thing you can do. But, I think that I found out earlier than I would have, earlier than I imagined I did, that wasn't me.
Okay.
And now that I have a, cause I could have, there were times when I feel like I had, the opportunity to go more balls out,
right.
And didn't. And now it's like I'm married, and, like, we want kids, and it's like, well, no, I'm not willing to make certain sacrifices. Like, I have
There's
to put
more at risk now.
Yeah, I have to put these things. There are things in my life now that I'm putting first, and so I don't even think that, like, I mentioned that to make the point that, I don't think that not being willing or able to make that sacrifice is, like, a morally wrong thing, or, like, makes you a bad person. It just makes you a person. And, like, and there's nothing wrong with deciding that, you're not prepared to totally upend your entire life and whatever plans or future or whatever that you have or aspire to have, in the service of what will be dangerous, thankless, vital work. Well, some people can do it.
Yeah, that's what I mean about her just being more ordinary. I don't mean that as a pejorative at all. It's just most people are more like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that's how most of us are. And it's also, it seems like, when you're thinking about, well, am I willing to give things up? he was willing to take a risk, but it feels like he started to do this fairly early in his life. Like, he never gave himself an opportunity to have anything that he would then have to give up.
Right.
You know,
right.
Which is a very careful position to place yourself. And it seems like he knew who he was fairly early on.
And it always fascinates me how people who can do that have so much trouble with their personal lives.
Mm-hmm.
Like Cornel West.
Oh, God.
I've heard Cornel West speak and been moved to tears. That man is amazing. Like if I could have 1/10 of that man's capacity for moral fortitude and just like the understanding of what the right and holy thing to do is, I would die happy. He has been married at least 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that's surprising at first, and then you're like, well, wait a minute, who the fuck can handle that shit?
Well, that's exactly, yeah, you have to find a partner who loves you and yet is willing to not be so attached to you that they don't let you do your work. And that's like not going to go together.
They have to accept that they're not the most important thing in your life is what they have to do.
And they have to accept that you being like, they have to accept that their partner does not consider their own safety to be a priority.
Yes.
That's the kind of thing that I could not be okay with. Like, you know, it's one thing for him to be like, listen, I love you, but this is really important to me and that's going to take priority. I feel like that's it's a hard thing to hear, but it's something that I can understand. And it would be concrete enough that I can like wrap my mind around it. But if Owen, for example, said to me, sweetie, yeah, I might die because of this, but that's something that I've come to terms with, and you're going to have to come to terms with it too. I just don't know, you know, people who go and sit and wait for their husband or wife to come home for the military, for example. I don't know how you do that. How do you marry a person that is going to be away with the threat of death hanging over them for years at a time?
No,
No.
I'm going in a couple of months. In a couple of months, I'm going out of town for like a little over a week, and I legitimately don't know how I'm gonna handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yep.
It's just like I really, you know, and you know, and the reason is because, you know, if Sharon ever said, hey, you know, it is whatever you're doing, this work or me. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, I would choose her every time. Mm-hmm. So that's and I think more people are like that. Yeah. So, you know, and that's not like, you know, oh God, you're such a bad person. You love easily and hard. Like, you know, that was poorly said, but yeah.
Well, I think what, like, I have a friend in this position where her husband is devoted to his work to such a degree that he is really neglectful of her. And his work is important. And he is one of the only people in the world who can do the job that he does. But he thinks that his work is not more important to her and manages to convince her repeatedly that it's not more important than her. But all of his actions say otherwise. Mm-hmm. All of them. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, is often what leads. Like, people will fall in love and they really will believe this person is number one, without really seeing that everything they do contradicts that completely. And so, you know, when somebody with the kind of like devotion to a cause that he would have, I bet he believed it. And I bet that's a source of conflict. It's just him thinking, no, but you really are number one to me. And women slowly finding out I'm not. And you keep telling me that. And you really believe it, but I'm not. And it's very clear. That's a hard thing when somebody says all the right things to you and manages to convince themselves so thoroughly that when they tell you, it has that ring of truth because they believe it. It takes a long time of their actions speaking louder and years of it for you to finally be like, when am I going to wake up and see what's actually happening instead of hearing the words that I'm being told? And that can take a shockingly long time. We're willing to believe a lot for a long time if it's what we want, you know?
Yeah.
So, anyway.
So we just spent like 20 minutes talking about this one scene that doesn't matter, but
yeah.
it's a great scene.
Well, you know, yeah, I think it's a good writer that can make this kind of like character moment out of something really throwaway, really.
Yeah, I was rereading this in preparation for tonight's episode, and I was like, oh yeah, this scene. You know, so anyway, so the important part of the plot here is that Rowan tells Callahan not to go back to home because the people who fucked him up, the Hitler brothers, were looking for Callahan and continually asking where he was. So Callahan figures the Hitler brothers were hired by the Lowmen to find him, which works out with, you know, Rowan not being their typical target.
Right.
So
and as
he's
we find out later, a lot of people are not their typical target, but they're like thugs for hire occasionally because they got to pay the bills, you know. That's
right. That's right. They gotta buy they gotta pay for Goering's fucking Luger. Anyway, so they are talking, and Rowan promptly starts to die. And Callahan is like, you know, I'll bet this means his sister's gonna be back soon. I think I'm gonna bail.
Like, you know what? I don't need to get slapped in the face again. Bye.
Yeah. So he leaves, and he's gonna leave town. But he decides that he wants one last look at home. Which, like, is the kind... I mean, it's that, like, head-slapping thing that you kind of, you know, when characters are like, but I'm gonna ignore what the guy just said, you know?
Right.
But at the same time, I think it's a little bit more forgivable, because it's not like he goes there and they're waiting there, hanging out, looking for him. Like, he's in the area,
I mean...
but he doesn't even make it to home.
That's the thing, though, to me, is that, of course, they're in the area. You don't go anywhere near it. Like, it seems like the same... It seems like the exact same mistake. Like, no, I don't forgive him. He was stupid, and I'm mad at him.
Fair enough. He made some bad choices during this time in his life.
Yeah, he did.
So he's walking down the street, passing by the place where the rose is, incidentally.
Oh, yeah, right. And he's like, I just don't know why I decided to go down that way. And they're like, yeah, we do.
Well, what I love is that he doesn't even question it. He's like, yeah, so, you know, the building was on 47th, and so I decided to go down to 48th and then turn back. And Eddie's like, dude, why didn't you just come down 46th? Like, you would have been right there, and you would have saved yourself doubling back a block. And he's like, I don't know.
Yeah, once they stop and ask him, he just doesn't have an answer. He's like,
Right, and it is at this time that we meet the Hitler brothers themselves, and...
Who I really expected to hate so much more than I did.
No.
And it's not like I like them, don't get me wrong.
Of course not. But
they are so fucking dopey. I expected them to be like... I don't know what I expected, but they don't even feel like... I don't even know how to describe what I'm trying to think. Like,
I expected like identical twins or something, or like, you know, basically like dudes who are super fit and jacked and like menacing. I expected menace.
Yeah, I guess that's really what it is. Like, I was picturing like Hitler Youth type.
Right.
You know, like the kind of guys who are really methodical and wannabe Nazis, and these are just a couple of idiots who needed something to feel fucking tough and needed something in order to be able to hurt people because it gives them an erection.
In one
just
case,
were like, you know
least,
what's great? Let's do this white supremacist thing. That sounds perfect. You know, like it was just a thing that stumbled across their path that they seized on that I don't even feel like they really believe in. It's just perfect for their ends, for their requirements, you know?
I feel like the little guy kind of does. Like, he believes in, like, the half-hearted way that allows him to justify what gets his boner up.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And, like, the big guy, I guess they're not actually brothers. They're just, like, friends. But the the big guy is just like super indulgent and be like, all right, fine, man, whatever works for you. Like, let's go kill some Jews, I guess.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it's so weird. It's like the big guy's the one that's in charge.
Yeah.
But it feels like the little one is the one that drives everything. Like, it's like they treat killing people like it's an amusement park. And the little kid is the one dragging the parent to all the rides. But the parent's the one paying for it and supervising.
Right.
And, like, it's just such a weird dynamic that I did not expect. And I'm not comfortable with it. And I don't like it.
The guy says, mostly we're dedicated, but we will work for $1 like any good American.
Yeah, bless.
And then he says we're popular in Queens,
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it because right before he says it, he says, and then comes the ultimate existential absurdity.
Yeah, that was my favorite. Like that.
And
because there are moments like that in these like horrific moments in your life where something happens that you're just like, how is this the way we exist?
And there is menace here. Like, clearly they are going to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
They are going to carve a swastika into his forehead and then kill him. But it's just like, you get this feeling that it's like, man, if somebody would show up
mm-hmm.
and see this happening, like I could do something about this.
Yeah.
This is not like, these guys are super tough or anything. But nobody's around. They are like just beating the crap out of Callahan. They break his jaw, kick him in the balls, threaten to shoot him. And they're gonna carve the swastika into his head.
Yeah, I was wondering if this is where Tarantino got the idea for Inglourious Bastards thing.
Yeah, this must have come first. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I fucking love that movie. Anyway.
Yeah, we just watched that again a few months ago, and I was like, man, this is really good. I forgot about it.
That is legitimately my favorite Tarantino film, and like I get grief for that, but it really is.
I don't really see why you would get grief for that. Like that feels pretty legit to me.
A lot of people don't like it as much. It's like it's too long, and there's a lot of kind of like long talky scenes, but I don't know. I really like that.
Oh my God, all the talky scenes are absolutely seething with tension, though.
Like, I know.
How could you even say that?
I feel the exact same way.
People
I
are
don't.
monsters.
Yeah, they're like, what about Kill Bill? I'm like, fuck Kill Bill.
Come on, guys.
Anyway, so, so they're gonna carve the swastika to his head, and what the guy that Callahan is for some reason thinking of as Lenny.
Mm-hmm.
He's thinking of the other guy as George, which is funny because he learns that his name is Nort, but still keeps calling him George or George/Nort.
Yes, yeah,
which
really
I like.
enjoyed
It's like
that.
when you get that name that you think somebody's name should be in your head before you learn their real name. It's like, well, there's no getting rid of that.
Oh my God, there is a friend that Owen has that he met for some reason. He was introduced to this guy, but got it in his head that this guy's name was Tim. His name was Matt. But he got it in his head this guy's name was Tim. And it became a joke within their circle, which became the guy's exclusive circle of friends, to call him Tim. Always and forever. To the point that Tim, in quotes, got a girlfriend and had been dating her for like 3 months before she found out his name was not, in fact, Tim. And she was completely freaked out. Like that she just straight up did not know the guy's name. Which would freak you out, right? Like...
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoy that weird thing that Owen made happen.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I know there's some friends, my social circle in high school had a lot of mics in it.
Mm-hmm.
And it got kind of crazy to the point where we decided that we were like, all right, the guy that everybody likes the most and we've been friends with the longest, you can stay Mike. Okay. Everybody else gets a nickname. And of course, Mike, because he's a contrarian motherfucker, decided, screw that, no, I want a nickname too. So he became Seven. And one of the other Mikes became Fuzzy. And this happened fairly early in our high school careers. And like, I remember our senior year, like there were kids who we would hang out with occasionally and were legitimately surprised to learn that their names were not Seven and Fuzzy. And I'm like, did you really think That was really? You
Right.
thought that? Okay. And the funniest part about it was we had another friend named Blade, and there was, and we'd tell him about the Mike stuff, and they'd be like, "Oh, so what's Blade's real name?" I'd be like, "His name is Blade."
Oh my god.
Like, his parents are weird. Just leave it.
Kid Blade.
I swear to God, his name is Blade, and he has a scar in the middle of his forehead.
Seriously?
Yeah. That is a true story.
Is he by any chance a black man?
He is not.
Oh,
Although,
damn. I was really hoping that he was, a vampire.
You're not the only one. The circle of people who wishes he was a black man includes him. So, Blade, if you're listening to this, buddy, I don't think you are, but if you are, sorry we haven't been in touch. We used to be super close, but it's been a long time, and yeah.
Yeah, it would be pretty fun if he were, in fact, half a Dracula. Okay, so back to our story.
So Lenny goes, "Can I please be the one to cut the swastika to his head?"
Oh my god.
And George's like, "No, you always fuck it up. You always fuck it up. I am doing it."
Mm-hmm.
But Lenny begs and pleads and cajoles and bribes until finally George is like, "All right, fine."
I like that it's because we have seen a lot more swastika stuff popping up in the past year. And
what happened?
And sometimes people don't know how to draw swastika. Sometimes it's hilarious because they're trying to send a message of hate and they just send a message of incompetence.
Oh, you fucking nutball. It ain't a swastika, it's a fucking cross. Give me that.
Right? Oh my god, I'm not wanting, don't get me wrong, Father Callahan to have a mangled, messed up swastika on his forehead for the rest of his life. But how hilarious would that be, though? Somebody really trying to send this message and they just get it wrong. That's so embarrassing. Yeah. Anyway.
So, but Lenny is like, "No, wait, give me a chance. I'm not done yet. It'll be better in a minute."
Right.
And as they're arguing, two dudes show up with a searchlight and a really big handgun.
It didn't even occur to me that these were the people that we get told they are later.
Yeah,
I know. Didn't even enter my head. I had no idea.
I know. I was the same way when I first read it. When they're like, later they're talking and Eddie's like, "So you know who those guys probably were, right?" And I was like, "No, I don't. Tell me." And Jake's like, "Oh yeah, I do. It was fucking Calvin Tower and Aaron Deepno." And you're like, "What?"
I get, why should I have known that? Because he writes it like I was supposed to have kind of started to put it together, and I'm like, mm-mm.
Which, reading it again, I can see it in a way, like knowing it already and going back and reading it. It's like, okay, the one guy's fat, and there's the Ex Libris ring and all that stuff. But no, there's no way.
We just haven't gotten a close-up description of them in long enough, and they're such side characters that expecting me to remember any of that, I couldn't tell. The Ex Libris ring, I didn't remember at all.
I don't think they mentioned it.
So
I don't think it was there. I think it was just supposed to be like, oh well, there's an Ex Libris ring, and what character do we know that likes books?
That's stupid, and I hate it.
Lots of them.
I mean, Ex Libris doesn't even have to be for somebody who likes books. Maybe they used to be a librarian and they hate books. They're an ex-librarian.
Oh, no.
Sorry, everyone.
Anyway.
Teehee.
So these guys are they have a searchlight and a gun on the Hitler brothers, and Callahan realizes instantly that they have never done anything like this before, and they're terrified.
Yes.
And they're kind of arguing with each other, and at one point, I believe it's Tower who makes them take their shoes and their pants off.
Yeah,
Which,
what is
why?
that?
It doesn't. I kept waiting. I was reading it again, and I was like, all right, so that pays off with something, right? Like, there's a reason he made them do that. And it's like, nope, he just wanted them to.
I didn't even, I forgot all about that weird detail. But yeah,
Yeah.
why does he do that? Maybe just to, put them at a disadvantage, so when they go out the door, they don't just hang out there, a couple of guys in their underwear. It gives them motivation to vacate the scene pretty quickly, because people are going to be they're going to be drawing attention to themselves.
Yeah, I guess.
It would have been better if he just made them really completely strip.
I do appreciate that at least one of them, who I think is Aaron Deepno, is clearly Jewish. It's fuck
okay.
these Nazi assholes.
Yep. Yeah, because he says something in Yiddish, doesn't he? Or is it in Hebrew?
I believe it's Yiddish. In fact, I'm positive it's Yiddish. I wish I could do an accurate representation, but I am literally the worst Jew. It's so funny every time my mom and my mom's not a celebrating Jew either. You know, we just kind of come by it because because her mom was, and we didn't go to synagogue or do anything like that, but we celebrated Hanukkah every year.
Okay.
And every year, you celebrate Hanukkah, you say the prayer. There's a specific prayer that you say at Hanukkah, and we said the same prayer every year. And I remember the first time we went to do the first time I remember going to Hanukkah with my family, with my mom's family in another part of the country, and who are all practicing Jews. Like, my cousins all went to Hebrew school, and they were all bar mitzvahed and all this stuff, and they start to do the Hanukkah prayer, and what they're saying is, I think the words are technically right. I think we were saying the same words, but we clearly didn't know how to pronounce them. And there were clearly words that we were leaving out. And me and my mom were just kind of glancing at each other going yeah, we know this prayer. Totally.
Oh,
It's really funny. Anyway. So yeah, I Guy Cockniff and Yum. I don't know. That's my best try at it. Probably.
Yeah, it's go piss in the ocean.
Yeah, go shit in the ocean.
Go shit in the ocean. Even better.
Yeah. I can see my grandmother saying that though. She knew, she had some great things to say in Yiddish. She was wonderful.
So yeah, they scare these dudes off, and these guys, he never actually sees their faces.
No, which is why we don't know who they are.
Right. But he is constantly, throughout this ordeal, giving them props mentally.
Well, he's thanking them for saving his life, yeah.
But not just that. He keeps on being oh, he's super scared and he's doing it anyway. Good for you. He overcame, he could sense him trying to get a hold of himself and calm himself down. And he was yeah, you get it, man.
Yeah.
I just really like that he's acknowledging in the midst of his horrific pain and injuries that you guys are fighting your overwhelming fear and self-preservation in order to help me out. Thanks, buddies.
Yeah. I mean, what I've been saying this whole time, if you think we should go punch Nazis, then great, go do it.
Yep.
Go fucking do it. I will be cheering you on from the sideline because most of the Nazis punch back and I don't fight very well.
I have been me and Rashawn have been talking because Rashawn is fucking scrappy.
Oh yeah.
There have been a couple times where she's gotten in fights with people in the street for real. And recently somebody did some shit to her that she has been kind of trying to find out on the DL where they live because she's ready to, and I will not get into that, but they deserve it. And I am 100% behind her on that. And I am not somebody who has ever been scrappy. I never got in fights in school. I got in one fight where I took a swing at my boyfriend and got restrained by the vice principal and sent home. That's about it. He deserved it also. But I've never, been somebody who got in confrontations on the street or at bars when I was drunk or anything else.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of spoiling for it. So the next person who starts to they better be ready because I have a deep well of rage to draw from and have been waiting to dip that bucket in that
Well,
well.
and
So
you know what? You're like working out and shit too.
I am.
Like you're getting ready.
Yep.
And I appreciate that.
You can stand behind me, Miles. It's cool.
That's fine. I will. I will write the article that talks about how violence isn't the answer here, and we need peace and love because we need that too.
Miles can hold my purse and my earrings.
Yes, absolutely.
Have you seen? You don't watch Key and Peele, right?
Oh, I totally do.
Oh, have you seen the skit where it's two women outside a club that are about to fight and they keep being like, will you hold this to their boyfriends?
Yes.
And they've taken their wigs off and their bras off, and pretty soon it's just like a couple of toddlers standing there and everybody's like, the fuck? Yeah, that's what it would be like.
Yeah, there's a really great scene in the movie Fear of a Black Hat that's kind of similar to that. It's like these two like gangster rappers who are fighting, and the guy's like, man, y'all gotta fight clean, drop your shit. And so they like start pulling out their guns and all their guns, and it takes like 5 minutes for them to pull all their guns off. They pull their switchblades off. Oh yeah, motherfucker, no, I'm dropping everything. Oh, you know what? I'm dropping the shirt. Oh, you're dropping the shirt? I'm dropping the pants. Man, motherfucker, I'm gonna fight you buck naked.
Oh my god.
It's really funny. I love that. It's a great movie. Anyway, yeah. So
there was a video that came out recently of a woman who was getting in another woman's face, and she had apparently said something really racist, and she, like, the racist woman was getting up in the other woman's face, not having any respect for the fact that the woman she was yelling at and insulting had very calmly sat down and begun removing her high-heeled shoes. And like, when a woman starts to do that, she knows what she's about, and you had better decide if this is really what you want to do.
Yeah.
And the other woman was not hearing the signals, and all of a sudden she got a little too close. And she started to be like, oh, what? If I get in your face, are you going to? And this woman reached out, grabbed her by the hair, yanked her to the floor, held her head in place by the hair, and decked her in the face like 6 times. And there was a security guy who walks up, sees her decking this woman. And I think everybody in that lobby heard what that other woman said. That was super gross. Mm-hmm. Sees it, and he steps back and like lets her keep hitting the woman. Like, he's kind of like, yeah, you know what?
That's amazing.
It is great. And the video catches the whole thing. So then all of a sudden when the cops show up, the racist woman tries to be like, she attacked me. And it's completely on video, and she doesn't realize like how easy it's going to be to disprove it. And she even pulls out, I'm 3 months pregnant.
Oh God.
And you're just like, oh lady, come on. But yeah, holding shit, taking off shoes, these are all signals that somebody is ready. So, tip from me to y'all guys. Anyway, so they run off. These dudes tell him that they're gonna leave him there and for him to chill while they go call the cops.
Right.
And he's a little flipped out that they might come back, but this guy says, if the Chinese are correct, then I am now responsible for your life, and I mean to take that seriously, which is kind of awesome.
Yeah.
And then he wakes up in the same fucking hospital bed that his friend had just been in because his friend died.
The same bed.
That is fucked up. That is deeply fucked up, and the fact that he like goes on a bender again right after that is 100% understandable.
Right? He says, what does he say? He's like, they must have had just about enough time to remake it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, he gets out of the hospital and then he takes off. Mm-hmm. Not before learning that the Hitler brothers have been hunted down and murdered, presumably by their employers for failing. And he looks for like the way out to his little secret highways. Mm-hmm. What are you doing? Sorry.
Is it your doggy?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you going to introduce us?
Oh, you're eating a cricket. That's what you're eating. Okay.
Ew. Gross.
I don't care. You can eat him. Yeah, this is my dog Wraith, and he is adorable and cute, and I can't leave him.
You named him Wraith?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really upsetting. I was just thinking about that episode of Black Mirror, 15 Million Merits, with Wraith's babes.
Oh, God, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I thought of that today, and I was like, it was lodged in my head. I don't remember why, but yikes.
He's yeah, I didn't think about that at all. No, he's got some. Hey, come here. Oh. He's
oh my god.
We've had him for about 2 months, and he's got some brindling, like some tiger stripes on him. He's kind of whitish, but then he's got spots on him, like big splotches that are tiger striped. And there's a book series by Terry Brooks called The Word and the Void, a trilogy. And in that series, there is a like magic tiger striped ghost dog.
Okay.
Named Wraith.
Nice.
And that is why I named him Wraith. And Sharon liked it, so that became his name. But yeah, he's very good. It's just that we've only had him for a couple of months, like I said, and he's still got some separation anxiety, especially because he was adopted and then taken back to the pound once before we got him.
Okay.
So he does. Sometimes he's okay with being not in the same room as one of us, but usually he is not okay with that.
Gotcha.
And also he chews on shit, so I need to keep an eye on him.
Yeah.
He just ate a cricket, so what are you gonna do? But I let him eat the cricket because they don't bother me, but Sharon will like scream if she sees one. So
crickets are horrifying looking.
Anyway,
so
yeah, he can't find his little footbridge again, so he just like takes off.
Yeah.
He just like books it and starts going around, working wherever he can and drinking everything he can find.
And he hits rock bottom when he has a seizure in jail.
In fucking Topeka, of course.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Where else would it be?
I forgot.
Yeah,
He's like, yeah, I was I dimly remembered a fight, and the guy kept calling me sir, so I figure it was a cop, which is so hilarious.
I love it. He was trying to try on the cop's hat.
Oh, I love it so much.
So he's in this like jail cell singing "Someone Save My Life Tonight," and some dude in the cell next to him is yelling out names in alphabetical order, and it's fucking bizarre.
Yeah, it is.
And while he's doing that, he has like a grand mal seizure.
Yeah, it is a really interesting because like I don't know what seizures are actually like, and I am trusting King that he like maybe did some research on this, but the distance with which he describes this is so interesting because he's like, all of a sudden my legs shot out, my arms shot out, I felt warmth and realized I had pissed myself, and he is very much in his right mind as it's happening. There's not like he's blacking out or anything or going unconscious, but he has no control over his body, which is a super scary thing to me. To like passing out and not being in it while it's happening feels way more comfortable than actually being fully present in your body while you watch it go completely outside of your control. And that just terrifies me. I hate that.
Yeah. There's obviously like a million different kinds of seizures. I think this is what would be described as a grand mal seizure, but I'm not positive about that. But yeah, it's not like, there's other kinds where it's like an epileptic seizure, like you're not conscious at all. You don't even you don't even have a gap in your memory, as I believe.
It says grand mal features a loss of consciousness and violent muscle contractions.
Okay.
So I guess not. I don't like.
He used the term grand mal, but he might not be meaning that literally.
Are we to believe that this is something that could happen because of his alcohol intake?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because like that shit'll fuck you up. I mean, it's like, like I have an alcoholic friend who started peeing blood a couple months ago, and I was like, yeah, man, that happens, and you either recognize it as a sign that you shouldn't be fucking drinking anymore, or you don't. So he realizes, Callahan does, not my friend, Callahan, that like basically the revelation he has while he is hitting bottom here in the cell having the seizure is, what the fuck did those two guys risk their lives for?
Yeah.
To save
a serious
what?
fucking question to ask yourself. Like,
Yes.
That's the kind of thing that it's so weird how we as human beings are, but somebody else doing something kind for us and us not wanting to let them down is so frequently more important to us than not letting ourselves down.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird thing about people.
Yeah. No, I know. It's we like, letting ourselves down. Who's gonna know?
Mm-hmm.
Just us. But I don't know. I've always found it much easier to let myself down than to let someone else down.
It's got to be the shame aspect, like a personal shame. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's that, and it's also just like, like knowing that you let yourself down, you're just responsible for yourself, and
Mm-hmm.
like you have to deal with that eventually. Like you have to look at that and be like, okay, am I doing right by me? But it's like it's more direct when you're letting someone else down and you feel like, oh shit, I really fucked up this person, like, or I really wronged them, or just didn't respect them,
The respect thing.
I didn't respect this person enough to, it's like, it's why I always feel bad when Sharon will ask me to do something and I forget about it, and she'll come home and she'll be like, hey, did you do this? And I'll be like, because I feel like, I did not respect her enough to listen to and internalize what she had asked of me.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it feels. So I think it's there definitely is a shame element, but for me at least, it's more like crap. I want to, I don't want to disrespect this person. Like I love this person,
Yeah.
So, but at any rate, he decides that he's going to get sober. And then if he's not sober within a year, he's going to kill himself.
Yeah. Man with a plan. I guess.
Sure. This is fucking a bizarre tangent, and I probably shouldn't even go into it. But have you ever seen a film called Julian Poe?
No.
Yeah, I don't really know one has, except for me, it seems like, and my mom, I guess. Julian Poe is this weird movie with like Christian Slater in it, and he's like this dude, and you don't really know what his deal is, but he goes to this town, this like super insular, like, not okay with outsiders little town. And he goes into this town, he just like sits in the restaurant or whatever and is having something to eat, and the whole town is like whispering and trying to figure out what he's doing there, and they start badgering him and asking him why he's here, and they won't leave him alone until he tells them why he's here. And finally he's like I came here I came here to and they're like, who'd you come here to kill? And he's like, I came here to kill. And he's like, they're like, kill? Who'd you come here to kill? And he's like, myself. I came here to kill myself. Just like out of nowhere. And they're like, oh shit. Oh, sorry, man. Okay. And then like he spends time there, and they're all like super nice to him, and they're like, they start giving him shit for free.
Aww.
And like, and he's like, okay, sure. And they're like, oh yeah, what you're doing is just so interesting and brave, and take this too. Which is great.
Right.
Except eventually, like, you have to do it.
Oh, that's terrible.
It's a really, really bizarre movie, and I don't know if I'd recommend it, but please somebody go out and watch this movie and tell me what you think so that I know it wasn't just a figment of my fucking imagination that I saw this film.
Yeah, I'm not buying it. I don't think
Swear to God. Yeah, Christian Slater, man. Julian Poe.
I'm pretty sure Christian Slater wasn't a real person, actually. So that's pretty much where this story ends.
Oh, he's real. Oh, that man's real.
He's in my heart.
That man was in Broken Arrow. All right. And Broken Arrow was like one of my favorite movies for a couple of years. Anyway.
So we are taking forever.
We really are.
So
sorry.
He finally gets his shit together. And finds this place that's a wet, like, shelter, like the one that he had been at home. Yeah. And is volunteering there, kind of following the same path of recovery. And he's really feeling himself, like he's escaped. And then they get a letter saying that we're going to give you $1 million.
Yeah.
Which, when you say it like that, it should be obvious. But, they set it up really convincingly.
They do, yeah. They're like, hey, we're this company. We're doing a charity thing.
They fucking apparently, lease out an entire building and hire fucking staff.
Big charade to get Callahan.
And he walks up in there completely unaware until the very last second that he's been had.
They also hire the super hot secretary to lure him
God,
in as well.
Quote, I read that out loud to Owen and he fucking burst out laughing.
The thing about the breast?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
The kind of woman who you believe that if you were allowed to touch her breast, you would live forever. That is a fucking bold line. I like it.
And Eddie, laughs his ass off and then looks over at his wife and is like, oh, shit.
That, I don't know how she didn't laugh.
Right, I know.
I understand that. At a deep level, there are some people that just look like they're not even mortal. And you're just like, please grant me some of your grace.
So, yeah, right. Callahan explains basically that there's some kind of partnership between vampires and the low men.
Mm-hmm.
And that when the low men were unable to get him, they went to this big charade.
Mm-hmm.
And finally were able to get him in the room with this dude named Sayre, who is the guy that invited him on behalf of course, the Sombra Corporation.
Right.
And so Sayre is like, all right, so here's what's going to happen now. We're not going to kill you, but all these vampires here are going to bite you, and they all carry AIDS, and that will kill you.
Yeah. That's fucked up.
That
Deeply
is fucked up. It is so fucked up that Callahan decides that in lieu of that fate, he will throw himself through the window.
Yeah, this guy did not anticipate this move. And I really kind of love Callahan for this. That he's just like, it wasn't even the living with AIDS thing. That wasn't even it. It was just the idea of them kissing me the way that I had seen them doing to people in the alleyways. He was just like,
to Lupe.
Nope. And
yeah,
he's
especially
running for that window thinking that maybe it's fucking shatterproof glass. Oh my God, what if I just run and get squashed like a bug?
Right.
And he says this really heartfelt prayer as he's running towards it, and it breaks, and he's just like, oh, thank God, which is a crazy thing to be thinking as you're flying down however many fucking stories.
Well, he says they don't get to win after all the way he's come, after all the jobs, all the jail cells, after finally getting sober in Kansas, they don't get to win,
mm-hmm.
which I really appreciate.
Yeah,
I love that's a great sentiment. We should also mention that there's something weird going on with the Sayre dude. There's this bloody hole in the middle of his forehead.
Yeah. When he said a circle of blood, I pictured it as initially a ring.
Yeah.
But then when he's talking about it later with William, he says that it's this gaping eye, and I was like, oh, that's so much worse than what I was imagining. Oh, I hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't like this thing.
Gaping bloody eye. So yeah, he falls down off the skyscraper.
Mm-hmm.
And Jake relates to this. This is the same kind of thing that happened to Jake,
mm-hmm.
Dying in the real world, quote unquote, and being reborn in Midworld.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was Midworld because he went to the way station. He goes toward the light because there's light, and he hears chimes. And he finds himself in the stable with Walter.
Yeah. I was kind of weirdly proud of myself for realizing that this was that place after so long, but then that promptly went away because it felt like Walter's just fucking with everybody, and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't congratulate myself.
I feel like I would have noticed. Did they go in the stable, Roland and Jake, when they were here?
I'm not sure if they do, but there was just something about the way he kept saying that that he could tell he was in the desert, and that everything seemed tired and old and kind of worn out.
Oh yeah, it's definitely recognizable. I'm just wondering, if was the door here when they went in?
I don't know. I don't think so because probably they would have eaten that jerky. right?
Yeah, probably they would be, unless they like dropped the jerky, unless it was their jerky they left behind.
Maybe.
But like, given the nature of these doors, like I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that it just wasn't there and now it is.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it was.
So yeah, so this is when he had the conversation with Walter that we already kind of covered, I feel like, for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Walter is basically like, here's this box.
Mm-hmm.
Go through this door.
Yeah, he just shoves it in his hands, and Callahan like has to take it. Like he feels compelled to grab it, even though he really doesn't want to.
Yeah.
And then when he goes through, the box is open and it's like turned and staring at him, and he basically goes into shock and then passes out.
Yes.
Which is a crazy reaction.
Screaming, don't look at me.
Yep.
For the love of God, don't look at me.
I don't like it. I don't like it at
Oh,
all.
and I forgot to mention that that at some point here, after Callahan says there's a god, and the man in black hands him the box and opens it as he does,
Mm-hmm.
It is revealed that his hood falls back,
Mm-hmm.
and he also has that red mark.
Yeah, so this is like a cult or something, or it's the same guy, but I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
And Red King eye sigil thing, like
Yeah.
I just don't like this. I just don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like this like exposed brain that they basically have in the front of their head, which is how I think of it, kind of. A little tiny circle that's been drilled into their skull.
Right.
Exposing brain juice.
That's weird because I don't remember because again, it's like we saw Walter without the hood, but like that was when he was calling himself Flag,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if he changes shape or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, it's not mentioned before. It's weird that it's just randomly here again. Retcons going on and all up in this shit. But so he goes to the door and finds himself in the cave, and that's the story. Mm-hmm. That is how he found himself in Calabar and Sturgis. And he slowly starts to build a life for himself here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's this moment. Remind me, because he asks Jake about what about the dying? And Jake says something about the first time, the second time.
When was this?
What's Jake's second death?
Well, Jake's first death was under the mountains.
Right.
And, well, no. His first death was getting hit by the car. His second death was under the mountains.
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, I completely forgot about the car thing. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so... Yeah, and Callahan actually mentions, the divided mind phenomenon that Jake experienced. Yeah. He says, after the first death, before the second, Callahan looked visibly startled and he crossed himself. You mean it can happen more than once?
Bless his heart. He is not ready. I just really, like Callahan, it can always be worse, buddy.
Yes, for sure.
He's been through such hell that I don't want to have to say that to him, but, oh, sweetie, it could always be worse. And Walter tells him that, whatever he's done will be what kills them. You're going to try and help them all you can, and you're really just going to kill them. So have fun. Which he makes sure to, tell them about that part, which I appreciated, instead of keeping that shit to himself.
Sure, yeah. There's an interesting bit where he talks about Black 13 a little bit here. Mm-hmm. And for one thing, there's a bit where he mentions that when they're like, you fell for that $1 million trap, and he's like, yeah, man, it was the Reagan years.
Mm-hmm.
And Susanna's like, oh shit, Eddie wasn't lying to me. Reagan really was president. But there's this other bit where he talks about how he feels like he could use the ball to go back and see what really happened during the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah, is that how that happens in that other book?
Which book?
Isn't there a book called The Dead Zone where the guy goes back to like stop the Kennedy assassination or something?
A king book?
Yeah.
Not sure.
Or he goes back in order to. Hold on, I'm finding this.
All right.
But I'm pretty sure that what it is that he goes back in order to carry out the assassination because he finds out that something horrifying is going to happen if he survives.
Yeah, and I mean, I was interested in the fact that like that Susanna refers to Kennedy as a gunslinger. I don't know.
Here, yeah, what is that? I did not care for that. I don't know what that's supposed to be about.
I'm not sure if it's a Susanna characterization because it makes sense if it is. Like she was around in '64 is when she got plucked out, and like so Kennedy at the time definitely must have seemed like this great hope for the country, you know. But it could also be an expression of, you know, I mean, people have some pretty high opinions of Kennedy.
Okay, and it's the Dead Zone, but it was not actually Kennedy. It was like, you know, a Kennedy allegory, or is that what they call it? What's the word? And it's like clearly to be
analog.
Analog. Thank you. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, he brings that up, and Eddie's like, "Well, what if you just made everything worse?" And he's like, "Well, you know, I don't know."
Yeah, and he basically says that like the ball isn't going to let you do something good, basically, you know.
I love that. He's like, yeah, it's going to convince you that the thing you're trying to do is not only a good thing, but the best thing that will fix everything.
Right.
And when he says that, Roland's just like, yes. And like gets real clipped with it. And I was like, oh, I don't like that. Whenever Roland has a reaction like that, it really like kind of freaks me out. I don't like Roland having emotional reactions to things. It feels unnatural and it makes me uncomfortable.
We also find out that Callahan was sent Todash twice by the ball. Once to attend the funeral of his writer friend Ben Mears from Salem's Lot. And once when it sends him to the castle of the Crimson King, and he won't talk about that.
Yeah, didn't he say that there were big black birds?
Yes.
And he's just
great
like,
fat black birds. And beyond that, I'll not speak.
Not at night. Which is a great detail for some reason because it's so like superstitious, you know?
Yeah. And then there's this last conversation where they talk about the fact that Callahan had been part of the story the whole time, kind of, in a retcon sense. And, and it seems like Callahan is like, man, I wish I could go with you. And they're like, well, maybe you can. So it seems like they're kind of thinking of him as a larger part of the story than maybe he initially seemed. They talk about the fact that it was Calvin Tower and Aaron Deepno. And again, just like, of course it was.
Which I'm just like, okay. I just don't like, I don't know. Not only do I not feel like I should have known who they were, but I don't get the significance of it being them either.
Well, and like, I don't know, there's a little bit of cheating going on here because Eddie at one point is like, you're just guessing. And Jake's like, yeah, but it feels right. And it's like, oh, God. And yeah, but that's how shit works in this world. Like, if it feels right, it's probably true.
That's what, like, Chris Tex is, he was reading these and he stopped finally because he got really tired of the, like, Deus Ex Machina of just, it felt like the thing to do. He somehow knew that he should, like, he just couldn't take it anymore. It was just too much for him to take everything on faith and have it just be Ka. Well, it's Ka every time, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I get that, but it's like that's just the kind of series it is.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I was just like, well, if you don't like that, then you probably should have stopped.
Yeah, probably, yeah. If you don't like that, Chris, stop early. So yeah, and then they have a little. Roland like gathers them together formally, and says they're in council and asks if there's anything they need to discuss. And he's like, "All right, nope, okay then. Well," and then Susanna.
He's like, "Hey guys, And all of them are just like, can she just fucking say it, because holy shit.
Uh-huh.
Because they all know what's going on already, which I just hate. I hate it so much that she thinks that she's dropping this bomb on them and all of them are completely aware.
She looked at them each in turn, and when she came to the gunslinger, he saw sorrow in those eyes, and reproach and weariness.
Mm-hmm.
He saw no anger. If she'd been angry, he thought later, I might not have felt quite so ashamed. Which, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad you feel ashamed.
Yep.
So yeah, she says, as she puts it, I think I might be a little bit in the family way.
Yeah, I want to know, like, how, because it's clear from the way that that's worded that she's aware somehow that he knows, but I don't know how she knows he knows.
I think,
go down that line.
I mean, I don't remember if they addressed that or not, but, like, you kind of get the feeling that, like, if it's true, he would know. Like, he would have been the first to know.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like, if she's figured it out, he must have known already.
I guess so. Yeah.
I don't know. That's the best I got right now.
Okay.
And that's
the end of part
2.
Dun dun dun.
So we get to start part 3, The Wolves, next.
Oh boy.
Oh boy.
I really want to know what's underneath their masks. Is it all just like one person's face? Are they all just like automatons? Automatons?
Automatons?
Yeah, I've always said it automatons until I heard somebody say it. And then when I realized it was automatons.
I believe it is automatons, yeah.
Automaton sounds fucking ridiculous to me. Automaton. Like, shut up. What is that even? At least automaton, the word auto in it sounds like automatic. But automaton, that there's a U in auto. How are you just going to, like, get rid of that? I hate American pronunciations of words. We just decide whatever. And then everybody's like, well, yeah, you know what? I guess that's fine. And then we just have this nonsense language full of bullshit that just makes no sense to anybody.
Beautiful. So
anyway,
next week, I think we'll just read the first chapter of part 3, which is called Secrets. Secrets. And I'm very excited about this chapter, for a few reasons, but most of all because, I've been waiting for this chapter to come along for a very long time. Okay. Not for any great thing that happens in the narrative necessarily or anything like that. But there's something in this chapter that I've been wanting to complain about for just a long time on this podcast, and I finally get to complain about it, and I'm really excited.
Okay, cool. I mean, you know how I feel about complaining. I dig it.
It makes me so mad.
I'm just like, I remembered today about how Roland administers a, like, demon baby abortion in the first book, and I'm just really hoping that's not a thing that we have to go through with fucking Susanna, because I'm not here for that at all. Don't like it. Why can we not have the demon babies anymore, Stephen King? That'd be cool. Okay, so new patrons. What's up, guys? We have Bryce Reed, Anja Fetcher, Anne McDougall, and Michael D. all became patrons. So welcome to all of you guys. Those of you who are $10 and up patrons, please forgive me my tardiness on the patrons only postcards, because I just fell way behind on everything this month because of my birthday taking up a couple days in which I normally get a lot done.
Happy birthday!
Thanks! So I'm finally catching up, and those are going out, and I hope that you enjoy them because they're bookmarks and that's fun. Also, Unspooked, the second one went up this week, and I have the third one in the can recorded that I just have to edit. The third one is going to be extra long. It's like an hour, and it is a collection of stories by one person, and they are fucking spooky as hell and really interesting. It's you'll see what I mean, but I am not entirely certain about the origin of these stories, but I don't really want to know too much is where I stand. And I hope that you guys enjoy them as much as I did, because when I was first reading them, I was losing my mind. I was like, this is such a crazy concept. So those are going to be coming out next week. Unspookled is for any level patron. Does not matter what you are pledging. And I just do it once a week in October to celebrate the spooky season of Halloween. Also, I'm doing Bag of Bones with the Men from Overdue, and that was really, really fun, and is going to be going up a couple days, or I think will be up by the time this is on iTunes. It will have been up the day before. So Bag of Bones by Stephen King, which yet another book in which we have a writer protagonist. The number 19 pops up. He just loves to just self-reference.
Yeah, he really does.
But it's okay. And the book was really weird and interesting. I liked parts of it. Other things I was like, why? So, listen to that. It's a good one. And I just, you didn't watch Twin Peaks, right?
Not yet.
Okay. So I just watched episode 7, I think, of season 3, the newest season. Probably the most bananas episode of the show ever made so far.
Is this like the new one?
Yes.
Like the new Twin Peaks? Because the original was 2 seasons, correct?
Correct.
All right.
So this 3rd season is called The Return.
Is there a 4th, or are they making a 4th?
They're talking about it. I'm not sure they've got it or not.
Okay, so there's 3 seasons total.
Yeah.
Man, I can handle that. All right.
That second season's a fucking slog, though.
I know. You said already.
The 3rd season is so strange, and there's this episode that just aired, and I was like watching it, just like, I don't even know what to think of any of this. And when I searched the title, it was like Salon or somewhere had posted how to decipher the most bonkers episode of Twin Peaks yet. And I'm like, yep, all right, good. It wasn't just me, and we need a fucking guidebook to help us decipher the episode. Okay, I feel better now. So yeah, if you're interested in going along on that journey, become a patron at $5 or more, and you will get access to those episodes immediately as they go up. And if you are $1 or more, you will get access to those episodes once we are completely finished with the series. And then it will be released to all of my patrons. So, yeah. I think that's all I wanted to mention for announcements this time. And upcoming for the book club for the Halloween episode is The Haunting of Hill House, which I've already finished because it was really good. And I started it the day after I recorded Bag of Bones, and I just fucking flew through that shit because that is a great haunted house story. There's a reason it's a classic. Sometimes classics, I really am just like, why is this a classic? Because people like to say that, well, there's a reason and sometimes there isn't really a reason. Sometimes it's just they were the first person to have this idea, and people have done it way better since then. And now you've been spoiled by everybody doing a better version of it, and you go back and watch the original thing or read the original thing, and you're like, I guess. But this is one where I'm like, oh, this is that kind of story done properly. And it is an unnerving book. I highly recommend it. It kind of fucked with my head a little bit, as it's intended to do. And it's a psychological thing as well as like a just straight up ghost story. Guys, you really should read it, and you should listen to that episode when I record it. I don't know who I'm recording with yet. Don't ask me all these questions. Oh my God. I'll figure it out, but just read the book. Use unspoiledpodcast.com/Amazon to buy it. Ding. Okay, Miles, take it away.
Yes. You should all listen to the Smash Fiction podcast if you're not already listening to it, because you hear me plug it on this show every week. So why would you really not take my advice? Clearly, I think I come off on this show as a pretty reasonable and, well-rounded person, right? So go take my recommendation about listening to more of me.
I like how you really specified, I think I come off on this show.
On this show. Smash Fiction, if you're not aware, is a show where we take fictional characters and put them into conflict against each other and have funny and nerdy debates about who would win. As I mentioned earlier in the episode, our most recent episode is Jack Torrance of The Shining versus Annie Wilkes from Misery.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really fun episode. It is the first episode of this year's Smashtoberfest, which we have Sharon and I produced a brand new intro for this year's Smashtoberfest that we're pretty proud of.
That's a pretty good name. Smashtober.
Yeah.
I like it.
Smashtoberfest. And so yeah, that is out. It's available on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts right now. So check it out. Coming up next week is the Sunday after you listen to this will be our next Smashtoberfest episode, the Scooby Gang versus Five Nights at Freddy's.
Okay.
So that's happening, and then the week after that, y'all, the Sunday after that, which happens to be the premiere date for season 8 of The Walking Dead.
Oh God, is it?
Yep.
Oh.
And in quote unquote celebration, we are doing Michonne versus the White Walkers.
Oh, nice. Right on.
And joining us for that episode will be one Chris Tex Holcomb.
Hey.
And one Jamie Smith.
Hey.
We'll both be on the show. So that's going to be a week from this coming Sunday. So it's going to be Scooby versus Freddy's, and then Michonne versus the White Walkers, featuring those two lovely unspoiled co-hosts. So keep an eye out for that. You can find Smash Fiction on all the social medias, on Twitter at SmashFic Podcast. If you like the show and you want to support us, then you can go to Patreon, patreon.com/SmashFiction. Oh my God. I was doing so well. That wasn't even me forgetting like what I wanted to say. That was just my lip muscles failing, man. Patreon.com/SmashFictionPodcast, and check out all of the awesome benefits that we have going on up there.
Mm-hmm.
Check out my science fiction blog, Universes of the Mind, at universesofthemind.com to read my thoughts on Robert Heinlein's Double Star. Another blog entry in the works and will be going up hopefully soon. And then also, please go and listen to the Odyssey Storytelling Podcast, which is now weekly. We just came out with a really great show, A Night of Storytelling, hosted by a nationally syndicated cartoonist named David Fitzsimmons, who lives here in town. He hosted this Night of Storytelling for he's trying to promote a breast cancer walk here in Tucson. Okay. And so these are all stories from people who have had breast cancer, or people who have known someone who had breast cancer, or like doctors who have treated breast cancer.
Okay.
Very, very cool, very fun night of storytelling. It's called Thanks for the Memories, and that is online right now on the Odyssey Storytelling Podcast feed. And then we're going to be doing like 10-minute episodes basically on a weekly basis, unless we have something special like that. So it's going to be a 10-minute story or so per week. And then that comes out every Thursday. And on the last Thursday of the month, we do a full hour-plus long show that is a recording of the most recent live storytelling event. In this case, at the end of October, we will be releasing the Haunted show. Nice. So featuring all stories that will have a haunted theme. And I am actually a storyteller on that show. Don't come for me, but because like there are some other great storytellers there. But if you listen to Dark Tower and you've been listening long enough, you know about the haunted Pizza Hut. But I tell a slightly more embellished, not embellished like the facts are embellished, but more detailed. Detailed, written out, more rehearsed version of that story. Mm-hmm. I tell on the haunted episode. There's also some other kind of crazy shit. There's a dude who was in the Navy who like legitimately saw ghosts on the ship he was on because it was the oldest ship in the Navy that was still around. So like there's some really great stuff on the Haunted Show. We just recorded that like last week, so that'll be coming out at the end of the month. And I think that's it. I do have some other stuff in the works once again, but once again, it's not ready for me to tell you about yet. So yeah. for now, stick to Smash Fiction, the Odyssey Storytelling Podcast, and Universes of the Mind, and stay tuned for me adding yet another thing to my plate.
Yeah, and I'm not saying anything about that. I said my piece off mic loudly, and I'm just gonna leave it there. If you don't want to pick it up, then fine, just leave it there. That's fine. Whatever, Miles. I don't care. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm not bad.
I mean, I picked it up. I looked it over. I gave it a good observation, and I put it back down.
Put it back down. Left it there.
Yeah.
It's collecting dust.
It makes you feel
dust makes it no less right.
It makes you feel any better. Sharon and I are taking your other bit of heated advice from off air the other night, so that's happening.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No?
What?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. We love you.
Love you.
Don't we?
Love you.
Don't we, Miles?
I fucking love you all.
Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.